Okay, so how to start like Caeleb Dressel, or more importantly, why you shouldn't be trying to start like Caeleb Dressel, and how to actually get your body, your own specific strengths and weaknesses built up to a point where your dive is going to be the best you dive that you can possibly have. Now, there's a reason that not all of the best divers in the world dive exactly the same. Who else has got amazing dives? Ben Proud, completely different technique and dive to Caeleb. Then you've got, Brad Tandy, completely different technique as well. Flo Manadou's pretty good at the dive. Like, all these people that have an amazing dive do not dive, they all dive completely differently. And that's because there are so many different factors that go into play. First of all, did you play a bunch of different sports? What sports did you play? That's going to affect where you naturally feel more comfortable to do certain things. What are your body proportions? Are your femurs a little bit longer? Is your spine a little bit longer? If you got someone who's got a freaky long torso like Michael Andrew, he's going to obviously dive completely differently to someone who has longer legs, all of these things are going to impact where your center of gravity is, where you're going to have the best leverage in all of your techniques and in how you move and everything. And then you have to think about all the other little things, like where are your tendons attaching, and some people are stronger in areas because they just have different joint makeup, different tendon attachments are going to make you stronger in certain areas and all this stuff. There's so much going on that makes us so different. And then you come into your experience and your beliefs and, if you're someone who has maybe played tennis before, for example, you're going to favor different things to someone who didn't play tennis or someone who played soccer. You're going to have, all of these things. And then you've got your beliefs and the lifestyle that you have lived and what kind of... It's just infinite, right? There's so many things. And trying to take the best parts of someone else's stuff is fine, but you have to also realize, like, they dive the way that they can, the best way for them. I'll come back to Caeleb Dressel. He has figured out maybe not the best, not that you can ever be the best that you could possibly be, but he's figured out a pretty good way that works for him, right? And so all these other really good divers that I've mentioned. So the fact of the matter is, some people are just going to be better at dives, some people are going to be better at underwater, some people are going to be, if you have the natural body proportions for this stuff, like if you have size 17 feet, you're going to... if you have decent ankle mobility, you're probably going to be pretty good at kicking, right? If you have really short arms, chances are you're going to struggle with like pull stuff. If you look at like there's a video of I can't remember what it was, but there was like a swim off between I can't remember where they're from, but there was one quite short guy, short arms. The other guy was super big and tall and, big and lanky. And they had this swim off, and short arms guy destroyed the other guy to 15 meters. And then long arms guy brings it back towards the end of the 50. And I think it was a very close race, basically. But you're going to have different, based on your body proportions, where you're going to have different strengths, and you have to feed those strengths and not try. And if you're someone who has short arms, not try and swim like someone who has long arms. Anyway, I think I've hammered this home enough now. Shut up. Get to the point. Get to the meat. So in this video, I'm going to talk about what you can do to improve your own dive technique. You don't have to think about dive technique at all. This is stuff that you can do in the gym that's going to make you better at diving, full stop, no matter what you do, what your dive technique is, whatever. Okay, this is stuff that is going to improve that no matter what you're doing. So I'm going to split this into 3 parts. There's going to be talking about strength training. That's probably the first place to start. Then we're going to talk about power. Then we're going to talk about mobility. And then we might talk a little bit about technique and stuff. So, strength. Trying to increase your strength is like, it's not really, but it's useful to think about, if you're not strong enough, then everything else that you do athletically is going to suffer, right? If you're weak, then just getting a little bit generally strong is going to completely revolutionize everything that you do. Everything is going to become easier, right? You cannot be powerful without also having a decent amount of strength. Very simple. And the really cool thing is strength is actually pretty simple and easy to build. The problem most people have is that they do way too much to build strength because you follow mainstream advice and you end up doing like a bodybuilding program or something like that ends up getting in the way of your athleticism. So building strength is actually really easy, which means that you do not have to do very much of it, right? The more you do of it, the more it's going to interfere with you trying to be athletic, okay? You want to get just enough that you're building strength without it interfering with what you really want to do, which is be fast in the pool. And specifically for this video, be fast off the blocks. So, strength, very simple. You just want to get generally stronger. This means the way that we do this is we use minimal effective dose. Easy strength is a very simple way to do that. Things like 2 sets of 5. Brilliant. You could do just 1 set, right? You could do just a warm-up set. That's pretty much how we do the 2 sets of 5 anyway. It's a warm-up set, which is like a decently hard set, maybe up to like a 6 or a 7 out of 10 effort. And then you do your one main set, which is, about in the 5 rep range, going to about an 8 out of 10 effort. And then you're done. Boom. So you get to a point where you could probably do 2 more reps. Whether that's pull-ups, whether that's squats, whether that's hinges of different kinds. That's for another video. But getting generally strong is going to help your dive, no matter what it is. Pull-ups are going to help your dive, right? Because you have to have a strong back. You have to coordinate that with a strong hips. Hinging is going to help your dive. Squatting is going to help your dive. There are so many different phases of the dive where you start with your hips and your back, and then you pull yourself forward, and then your legs, knees, ankles, everything kind of finishes you off. So you need all of that to be strong, right? So just general strength program, push, pull, hinge, squat of some sort. All of that stuff's going to be really beneficial. Don't do too much of that, okay? It's just going to fry you. It's just going to make you tired. It's going to take away from the other stuff without actually making you that much better. So minimal effective dose with that. If you want to join one of our memberships, that's exactly what we do in our memberships. We give you just enough. We change things just enough so that you're always improving without having to be destroyed by what you're doing in the gym. That's the strength part. Very, very important. If you're not strong, you're not going to be powerful. The next thing, power. So in the dive, there's kind of like if we split power into sort of 2 parts, there's like this brute power where you're starting the movement from pretty much your hips and you're trying to extend your hips to push yourself forward. That's a very slow, because we're going from a dead start, right? So that's going to be more on the strength side of things. So strength is going to help that part a bit more. But this is going to be things like dead start jumps, things like seated jumps or seated broad jumps, or like Olympic lifts, things like this, where we're moving a heavy weight at like kind of a slowish sort of speed. That's going to transfer to the start of that dive, getting yourself starting to move forward. But then we get into this point where, you know, you've got your back leg off the block and you're kind of in this position. Then you need things to be a bit faster. So you need your knees to extend, you need your hips to extend violently, and then you need your ankles to spring you off. So for that, it's going to be different types of power work, right? That's going to be things like plyometrics. Hopping is going to be really good for that. Pogo jumps and variations of that sort. Altitude drops, things like that, where you are absorbing or producing force quickly, or you're rebounding that force very quickly. That's going to train that quick twitch, that kind of flick that you get off the block. So you've got this strength phase that is kind of pushing you forward, pushing your body weight forward, and then you've got this boing. It's like, and then boing at the end. Hope those sound effects really made the point there. And it's all across this kind of spectrum as well. It's going to be high force, slow speed, and then it's going to be high force, high speed. So, power work, you need to fill up your strength with power, right? You can be as strong as you like, but if you can't express that strength quickly, then it's not very useful, okay? So, we've got strength, then we've got power stuff. Then we have, what was the other thing I said? Mobility. Mobility work, right? If you cannot get into a position, you cannot be strong in a position. So you see, like, some swimmers, when they get on the blocks, their bum is really low and their legs are very bent. Yes, maybe due to proportions, but usually it is just because they lack the flexibility to be able to actually get into a dive position in the first place. With your hips high, your hips locked and loaded in that stretch position. If you are one of these people, you know, whether it's you've got very tight hips, well, that's usually it, then you're not going, first of all, you're not going to be able to get into efficient leverage positions. Like, you're not going to be able to move your body weight forward very quickly, right? That's why you're slow off the block. And the easiest low-hanging fruit is to improve your mobility so that you can get your center of gravity on the block further forward on the block. So that's one thing, is, you know, if you can actually get into a proper dive position with your hips high and you're still got leverage on the front of the block, then it's going to take less for you to get yourself moving forward on that block. So that's the first thing. Second thing, and probably more important, is if you cannot lengthen your muscles, you're going to be less powerful. And a lot of people don't really think about this or understand this. Let's say, let me put this here. If my bicep, for example, if I'm here, well, here, I've got the face track on. So if my bicep's here, if I can only lengthen my bicep this far, if I'm trying to hit my hand here, boom. If I can only lengthen my bicep this far, it's not going to be as powerful as if I can lengthen my bicep all the way, boom, right? If I can only do this, not going to be as powerful because there's less space to accelerate through. Okay, that's an extreme example. But when you're on the block, if you think about your hamstrings, your glutes, if all of that stuff is so tight, it's like you're trying to do a 1 inch punch, right? Whereas if you can lengthen that muscle out, you have so much more space to accelerate. And bloody hell, if you've got all of your muscles working together to create this length and to coil yourself up, and then boom, you have so much more length to accelerate through, therefore you have more space to create more force and you're going to be more powerful, right? So That's why we do a lot of mobility work, and doing mobility work is also going to improve your power because of the length thing. And then also you're not resisting yourself, right? The tighter you are, the harder you have to work past that tightness. So mobility work is very, very important and should be a really important part of your training. What are we coming back to? So for you getting better at diving, if you improve all of these parts, if you get stronger, if you improve the different parts of the power continuum, and if you improve your mobility and your strength at these end ranges, all of those things put together are going to make you an athlete that is much better able to have an incredible dive. Okay, you're going to get much more out of working on these things much more quickly. You're going to get a result much quicker than trying to dive like Caeleb Dressel when you're never going to dive like him. You're never going to do that, right? He is a freak, and he's a very specific person as a freak, right? You do not have his proportions, you do not have his history, you do not have all that stuff, and you don't want it, right? You have your own history, and your own proportions, and your own way that's going to help you move best. And the best way to do that is to take these general things first, and then, because if you're weak and you get strong, your technique is going to be completely different, right? So there's no point worrying about technique so much, because you might as well get strong first. It's going to happen, you can make massive gains in your strength in a year or 2 years. You can be a completely different athlete. You're not going to, the technique that you were trying to do a year ago when you were weak is going to be pointless, right? You're going to be able to do completely new stuff, and your body's going to move differently. And chances are it's going to do things like without you needing to think about your technique, right? Because you're diving in a split second. If you're needing to think about technique, you're done, right? It's over. Your brain can only think about one thing at a time. That's why the gym work is so powerful, because it brings up our weak links. It rewires the nervous system so that when you get into the pool, when you get onto the block, you're doing things without thinking about it. Very important. That's what we do in our memberships. Just remind you again. All of this we integrate into every single session in our memberships. We make it easy for you. So if you are someone who is struggling on the block, nothing's working, technique's not working, even if that stuff is working, if you're serious about swimming, you need to have a proper strength training plan designed for swimmers, designed to get you strong, powerful, fast, mobile in ways that are going to transfer to the pool without wrecking you for your pool sessions, because what you're doing in the pool is the most important part, but what you're doing outside of the pool is going to make or break what you're able to do inside the pool. So this is fundamental stuff, really important. There'll be links somewhere to check out the memberships if you want to do this stuff properly. But yeah, stop trying to dive like Caeleb Dressel. Start trying to dive like yourself, and chances are you have so much work left to do before you even need to worry about your dive technique. All right, have a good day.